You what?
He is a little bit annoying, but he'll move, so.
going to be interviewing my mom and dad, grandpa and grandma, for Andrew to do a heritage project, and also so we can get a little bit of their history preserved to celebrate their 50th anniversary, talking a little bit about their backgrounds and how they met and how they came together and what happened after that. So Andrew's going to be starting the interview, and then we're not going to stick to a real formal program here. Anybody who wants to ask anything can jump in, and feel relaxed. Dad, you don't look very relaxed. We're not going to put this on TV or anything like that.
Yeah.
If you don't like it when it's done, you can destroy the tape.
I thought we were on live right now.
Yeah, for the world to see. So Andrew, do you want to start? Nice and loud.
Sure. Okay, how far back can you trace your family history? And this can start with Grandpa.
Well, as far as on my mother's side, I mean, I can only go back to my grandpa and grandma. That should be Grandpa and Grandma Staples. And on my father's side, my grandpa Onken died before I was born, so I never ever knew him. And so my grandma Onken, they had a total of 13 children, so there was a big family there. And their heritage is from Germany, but I think it has to go back 2 more generations before they actually came from Germany. They came originally to America and settled in Illinois, and then later moved to Iowa, and then from there moved to Minnesota.
I wonder what years that would have been when the first Onkens came from Germany. If it was 2 generations prior to your Grandma Onken, Grandpa and Grandma Onken.
Yeah, I'm quite sure it was 2 generations back.
And she was probably born 1880 to 1890, somewhere around there.
Yeah, maybe a little earlier than that, I would say.
Yeah, she was.
Because she would have been born.
She was in her 80s when I was only 12
Yeah,
or
I'd
so.
say she was born in the 1860s or 70s, probably.
Okay. So 2 generations before that would have been about early 1800s, probably,
Yeah, I would say so.
when they first came from Germany.
Yeah.
Okay, Grandma, how far can you remember your family history?
My grandma Bearden, my mother's grandmother, was from Pennsylvania. Actually, they were descendants of Germany, Pennsylvania Dutch, and lived in the colonies in Pennsylvania that is known as, what county?
Lancaster.
Lancaster County. And you hear of that quite often when you hear of the Mennonites and the Amish group, and they did participate in a close religious group that were very similar to what the Amish. And
The Pennsylvania Dutch weren't actually Dutch, right? Isn't that?
no, right, they were
Somebody was telling
German.
us they were actually German.
German, right.
It was Deutsch rather than probably Dutch.
Oh, Deutsch
Some
was
Deutsch to
translated,
start with,
okay.
yeah.
Started to loosely be called Dutch.
Yeah.
And I don't know when their family actually came from Germany, because I don't think they have traced that back far enough to know, but my grandmother moved to Iowa, or to Illinois, and then they moved to Iowa and then to Minnesota. So it was, I do have a book that recalls their 50th anniversary
Of who now?
of Grandpa and Grandma Bearden. And their 50th anniversary was, no, this is in 1945. And so they were married in 1895. But this little booklet does not go back to tell where her, oh yes it does too. Grandpa Bearden was born in 1870 in Auburn, Illinois. And Grandma Bearden, is that right? Was born in 1847
Also
in Lancaster County,
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
So would it have been just one or two generations before them that they emigrated
I
from
would-
Germany?
Yes,
Okay,
I would think so. Mhm.
so probably around the same time, the early 1800s.
And Grandpa Bearden was from a family of 11 children, and Grandma Bearden was from a family of 9 children.
Big families.
Mhm. And then my grandpa and grandma had 7 children, of which my mother was the 5th of the 7 children.
Now, was your father's side also from Germany, do you think?
My father's side was from England. Actually, his last name was Chapman, very English name, and they had moved into Canada. And my grandpa Chapman was an orphan. And he had been...
Emery's father?
Yes, Emery's father, and he had been adopted as a boy.
Chapman's
By I can't, right now, I can't recall, George, by a George Chapman, George and Rebecca Chapman,
Who would have been your great-grandparents?
who would have been my great-grandparents.
Okay. Other question?
Yeah, what were your parents' occupations?
Well, both sides of my parentage they were farmers.
Where?
Well, farmers on my father's side, Illinois, then Iowa, and then Minnesota. On my mother's side, Minnesota, as far as I know.
And your student?
And I think both sides of my family, the parents were probably also farmers.
What kind of crops did they grow?
Well, they raised corn, oats, wheat, barley. And at that time, particularly grandparents' time, most of it was raised for their own livestock. I don't think too much of it was sold at that time. It was primarily farmers were big enough to
They
eat
were
what
pretty
livestock they had.
self-sufficient
Yeah.
then? Maybe I'll ask about early childhood.
Oh, yeah. All right, tell us about your life as a child.
Either of you, yeah. Go ahead, Mom.
Okay, I was one of 6 children. I had 2 older brothers and 3 younger sisters. We always lived on a farm. Since I was the oldest daughter, I did a lot of the cooking and cleaning and working in the house, while my mother was helping outside with the gardening and the chickens and so forth. We always had a very close relationship at church, and I can remember very clearly my dad piling us all into the Model A Ford and taking us to church every Sunday morning. And
Where did you live then, when you were a kid?
we lived in Worthington, Minnesota.
And Dad, where were you born?
I was born in Slayton, Minnesota. I had 2 brothers and 1 sister. And when I was 5 years old, my dad died from pneumonia. And probably about a year or so after that, then my mother remarried my dad's brother, in other words, my uncle. And then after that, then my mother died when I was 10 years old in childbirth. And then later my stepfather remarried, and after they remarried, well, they had 5 children, so I had 2 stepsisters and 3 stepbrothers.
Do you remember that time in your life as a kid, when your mother died? And when your father died, you were only 5. Do you remember that at all?
I don't remember too much about it. I do remember the funeral, and I guess the thing that always strikes out in my mind about the funeral, I couldn't figure out why we were going to church, and it wasn't Sunday.
On a day that wasn't
Yeah.
Sunday, yeah.
For some reason, that's always stuck in my mind. I was, of course, was 10 when my mother died, so I remember that very well,
Yeah.
yes.
You were the third oldest?
Third.
You're the third,
Mhm.
okay. Is it Ken
Kim,
And then-
Les, and myself, and Doris.
and then Doris? Okay. And then you went to high school in Slayton?
Yeah, I went to country school to begin with, and then when I went into 9th grade, went into town school to Slayton. When I was a junior in high school, my step-parents moved to Illinois, and so then I stayed in Slayton, worked for various farmers there in the neighborhood, and finished school there.
So you were probably about 16?
I was
15 or
15 when they
Okay.
moved to Illinois.
And why did they move?
Moved there because my stepfather was going to teach Broca school, which is what he had trained for.
And who did you live with?
I lived with my uncle for a short period of time, Vernon,
Which one? Brian?
and then I worked for the neighbor across the street, across the road, Ike Swenson, for about a year, and then I worked for Clayton Anderson for about a year. Worked at the gas station for a while, and then went to service.
And Mom, did you go to a country school too when you were a kid?
No, we lived in the country 2.5 miles out of Worthington, but we always rode a bus to school. And on snowy days and bad weather, my dad used to take us in the wagon to catch the bus because the bus couldn't get close enough to the lane where we would get on, and he would take us in a wagon or a sled pulled by horses to meet the bus. And always went
Is this the place in Worthington you're talking about?
yes, and we always went to a city school, and there were, I would say, at least 30 in that. We didn't have kindergarten. My first grade teacher was Miss Rowe. I can still picture her very clearly. And I went first through sixth grade in the elementary school in Worthington, then to the junior high, 7th through 9th, and started high school in Worthington, and then moved to Lake Wilson when I was a junior. And
Was there-
graduated from Lake Wilson High School. But all this time, would ride the bus to school always, to and from school.
Did you go to college?
I went to Mankato Commercial College for 18 months.
To do what?
To be a secretary, and took secretarial courses. And after I finished my 18 months there, I worked at Montgomery Ward's in the office for a while in Mankato. And there was a calling card out in Cheyenne, Wyoming at F.E. Warren Air Force Base that got me to transfer to go out there and look for a job. And I found a job as a bookkeeper in the Dixie dress shop. And I was working there when we got married.
I didn't go to college. Because of working on the farm, I didn't really have the money to go to college for sure. And I went into the service about a year after I got out of high school. So
How old were you when you went into the service?
I was 17.
Do they accept people now at age 17, I wonder, or do you have to be 18 now?
You can go in with your parents' consent at 17.
Okay. And was that the situation then? You had to have,
I had to have
And
someone else to
Bernice's-
sign. No, I had got someone to sign that I was 18.
oh, who did that for you?
It was at the gas station that I worked at. The boss did it. So I went through the first enlistment.
They don't ask for a birth certificate?
No, well, you can get someone to sign instead.
Okay.
I went through the first enlistment with my birth date wrong because of
By
that.
a year?
Yeah. And then when I re-enlisted, I took the birth certificate and got it straightened out. But
So it said 1929, was
that was what I was
your
listed
birth
as,
year
yeah.
is what they had.
Mhm.
So when you first went into the service, what was that like? Where did you go for basic training?
I went to San Antonio, Texas for 13 weeks.
And
Middle
had
of
you
the
two
summer.
met by that point?
Yes.
You met before Dad went into basic training? You were in
Both
high
still
school
in high school, yeah. Mhm.
So you
What-
did it a long time before you got married, right? How long?
Well, it's been 3 years almost. I guess we met in 46, I think. In the spring of 46 is when we met, because that's when, during a basketball tournament time.
Yeah, I remember something about a basketball
Yeah.
tournament.
It was during the district tournament at the end of the
Was
basketball
it
season.
46 or 47?
I guess it could have been 47.
Oh, I bet it was
I
46
graduated.
before you because you
graduated
graduated
47.
in 47, so it was 46.
Oh, a year
Yeah.
before you graduated.
Mhm.
So it was Slayton High School playing like Wilson High School
Right,
in basketball
in the
tournament?
tournament,
Mhm.
And were you a cheerleader, Mom?
right, I was cheerleader, and we were waiting for the players to get dressed after the game, and the cheerleaders were outside, and he wasn't a player, but he and his buddy were outside, and we met them, and had a date the next night.
And were Ken and Betty there that night?
They weren't the first night that we met. They went then the next night with.
It was a
with
double
us.
date.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm. So you were 16 at the time?
Yes.
Yeah. I was. You were 17, I guess.
If it was spring, you probably had
Okay.
turned 17 by then. Yeah.
I'm not sure what it is. 47 instead of 46. I think it is.
Go ahead. That's all right. Andrew has a question.
Yeah, it's a little off the subject of what we're talking about now, but why did you decide to go into the service?
Well, probably to kind of get my life straightened away. I kind of was bouncing from one thing to another, and a friend of mine that I graduated from high school with, we just kind of on the spur of the moment decided that we'd go in the service, and so we went to see the recruiter and signed our name, and first thing we knew, we were on a train going down to San Antonio. A day or two later, we were sure wished we hadn't done it.
How come?
Oh, it was the treatment you get when you first come in the service. They shave all your hair off, and you know, everyone's you're not used to being bossed around like that.
You probably get a lot of shots.
Yeah, a lot of shots.
Get stripped of all your
Get,
personal belongings, or you can't bring much along for personal belongings.
No, and of course you got issued the clothes that you had to wear.
Up at a certain time,
It
lights
was
off
just,
at a certain time.
After leading a very carefree life, it was quite a shock to both of us. So. It's too late then.
That was Dale Peterson.
Yes.
So where were you first stationed then?
After basic training, was assigned to Warren Air Force Base, Wyoming.
And you weren't married yet then?
But you went out to Wyoming for that job?
I did.
Yeah,
You said you got
After
a calling card. Did Jiggs send you a postcard or a letter?
No.
Or,
no.
He sent me a newspaper with all of the jobs available in Cheyenne, Wyoming.
I was out there about a year before she came out there because,
And you were
I
just
went-
writing back and forth. I suppose you weren't telephoning each other.
no. I went there in August of '48, and
That came in May of,
I think we got
or
engaged
September.
when I finished basic training in August of '48, so. Is that correct, or was it later than that? I can't remember.
I think that's probably right.
Anyway, I know it was when I had come home on leave, but I can't remember if it was from leave from basic training or if it was later.
So you left college to go out there?
Well, I was finished with
Oh.
college because it was an 18 months
Yeah.
course in business college. It wasn't a 4-year or
Yeah.
2
So you didn't, neither of you knew anybody out there, huh? You knew people you worked with?
Yeah. Mhm. After living in the barracks for a while, I guess I was interested in getting married and living off base. So
If you weren't married, would you be required to live on base?
yeah,
Oh.
That's why
What a
he-
reason for getting married.
That's why he married me. to get
How
off
romantic.
base.
not only that, but you got $30 a month more because you drew separate rations.
And he figured he could support you on $30 a month.
Well, I was a two-striper at the time. My basic pay was $90, and I got that separate rations for $30, and
A month?
yeah, and
$70 a month?
I think the government allotment was $40 for having a wife, and I believe it's what I wanted to. So probably we may have had $150 a month.
So I really boosted his pay.
Yeah, you were quite a
That's
quite a catch.
great asset. Yeah.
$150 a month?
Yeah.
About $150 a month.
That's exactly what my dad made starting teaching in 1949.
Oh, is that right?
1800
Yeah.
year.
Yeah, that's probably about
Right
right.
around the same time?
Mhm.
Mhm.
When you got married, was it a military style wedding or was it a custom wedding
It was, we were married in a chapel, by a chaplain. When you say a military style wedding, it wasn't one with, that you think of sometimes with the swords and all that. We didn't have that. It was a very simple wedding.
But you wore your
You were
uniform.
in uniform.
Yeah.
And the
It was
attendants.
the only suit you had probably, huh?
Yeah,
And the attendants wore, the men attendants wore uniforms.
Uh-huh.
And it was in an Air Force chapel.
In Wyoming.
And the Air Force chaplain at F.U. Warren, Wyoming, at Cheyenne.
we were probably married out there as much as anything. It's probably kind of a difficult subject, but her parents were not overly joyed that we were getting married.
I always had
Plus,
that feeling
um,
that, I think you had said something before that had sort of made me think that.
They did not come out to the wedding, but there were, of course, other circumstances. Phyllis and Fritz had gotten married 2 days before that.
In Lake
and-
Wilson?
And
Or Worthington?
3 days
or
after, 3 days
Lake
after
Wilson.
Harold and Maggie got married, so
Also in Lake
we were
Wilson?
married in between, you know.
But we had our wedding date set first.
Mm.
But Jiggs couldn't get leave then.
Yeah.
And so we decided to go ahead and get married out there instead of waiting until the following summer when he could get leave.
Yeah. I assume Ed and Bernice didn't come either?
No, they did not. No,
So there was no family there?
Phyllis and Fritz and Bev and Franz were the only family there.
Okay. Well, at least they came. None of your brothers were
Yeah.
there.
That was Phil and Fritz's honeymoon, more or less.
Oh.
They came.
So what did you do for a honeymoon then?
We went
You didn't have any leave?
no,
Well,
We
the
just-
three couples of us went to Pole Mountain in Wyoming, which is a scenic national park outside of
it's about 50
Cheyenne.
miles west of Cheyenne, and
And
that's all we did. So we didn't, we spent our wedding night in the place that we were gonna live in. We
Mm-hmm.
had one room, well, it was actually the place that Mom had rented before that, so, where she was living.
It was a one-room apartment?
Yeah, it was just a bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
It's,
and we shared the kitchen and the bathroom with the landlord and his wife.
Do you remember how much you paid for it?
$30 a month.
That's a big chunk of your income.
Yeah,
We had to wait until they were finished cooking and cleaning up the kitchen before we could cook in the evening. We had to wait until they were finished with the bathroom in the evening before we could have the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
But we only lived like that for a month or so before we found a one-bedroom apartment, and then we shared the bathroom with just one couple.
but we had a hot plate that we cooked on, and it wasn't, we didn't have a kitchen or anything like that, but cooked on a hot plate.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, we lived there quite a while before we,
You eat
It
a lot
was-
of peanut butter
It
sandwiches?
was a nice apartment though. It was nice and clean,
Mm-hmm.
and it had a separate bedroom.
Mm-hmm. You can make a lot of soup on hot plates. And then from there, how long were you there?
I think probably 4 or 5 months, and then we moved to a place that had a little kind of a kitchen and then a one bedroom, then it had a kind of a living room. Because your parents came out and visited us there. And that would have been in the 50s, because I know that's where we were living when we lost our first baby.
And that was what year?
1950, yeah, so
August 9th of
1950.
1950.
Dad, you were in the military. What kind of work were you doing at that point?
Well, at that point, Wyoming, I was teaching in a typing school, or typist school, taught typing for, I guess probably about 3 years or so, the first 3 years or so that we were married. And it was shift work, because that was at a time when they were really building up on the clerk typist school during the Korean War build-up. And so we ran shifts from 6 o'clock to 12 o'clock, and then 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock, and then 6 o'clock to... So I had rotating shifts as far as when I worked and then what class you were assigned to.
And where were you working then?
I was working at the Dixie Dress Shop as
Okay.
a bookkeeper.
And how long were you in Wyoming altogether?
We were there from 49 to 51, and then we went to Bowling Green, Ohio, where I was a student counselor too. They taught clerk typist school there also, and I was a counselor to the students. And of course, that's where you were born.
Mm-hmm. But we didn't live in Bowling Green very long, did we? Because I thought it was
No.
only a few months old when we moved.
Right. We were there about a year and a half was all. We left there in 52, so probably about May of 52. I think we were just
And then back to Cheyenne again?
back to Cheyenne for 2 more years. Left there in 54. And that's when I went over to Germany, and you and Mom went to stay with Grandpa and Grandma for about
How
3
long?
months or
Couple
so, I
months.
think. You came over in February, and I went over, it was more than 3 months, I guess, because I think I went over in September, October, and you came in February.
Well, we left Grandpa and Grandma's the day after Jill's birthday
In January.
in January.
I think you got over there about the 1st February, though.
And how did we get from Minnesota to, did we fly out of New York, or did we sail out of New York?
You took a train from
A train.
Worthington
Worthington
to New York.
to New York.
And what do you remember about that trip?
It's the first time we'd ever taken a train cross country, and we had to change in Chicago, and then when we got to New York, of getting off of the train and getting out to, what was the name of the base?
Camp Kilmer.
Camp Kilmer, and they knew that there were a lot of dependents coming in on that train, so they had a bus meeting everyone to take us out to Fort Kilmer.
Did you know what to expect? Did you have
Not really.
instructions or anything like that?
Just orders telling us what to look for. So then they had to update all of our shot records, and we weren't able in Lake Wilson to get the shots that were needed for overseas. So we had to get the rest of our shots before we could sail.
How long were we in New York before we could sail?
3 days, I think. And then we sailed on the General Rose ship.
Takes 10 days.
And it took 10 days.
to go across.
This was about 1955?
That was in 55, the end of January. And
How long? 10 days?
Mhm.
and it wasn't a bad trip. It was a very moving experience to pull out of the harbor with all of the military bands playing all the patriotic songs, and pulling out of the harbor and see the Statue of Liberty get further and further and further away, and not know if you'd ever see it again.
Yeah. Oh.
And on the ship, we were treated like royalty, all the dependents. And we could look down to the lower decks and see a lot of the military men in uniform that were going over without dependents that were, and we kept thinking, oh, once we get overseas, that'll be there. Kept telling you that because you were kind of scared and you were kind of seasick the whole way going over. And you'd gotten a birthstone ring for your birthday before we left Minnesota, and you were washing your hands in the cabin, and you were scared to death because the ship was rocking so much and you didn't want to take a bath, and you didn't want to, and your ring went down the sink, and you cried and cried and cried, and we got the what was he called, to come in and see if he could find the porter, to see if he could do anything about finding your ring. But he said there was
It was probably out to sea.
out to sea by then. But
I seem to remember it being, well, and I suppose, I was 3 years old, that this is probably exaggerated the way I remember it, but it seemed to me that it was real rough at night.
it was,
And
and the
that,
bits, you really rocked a lot.
didn't they strap our luggage
Yes.
to the walls to
Well-
keep them from sliding around in the room?
The first night, they forgot to strap, and in the night, all the luggage and everything went sliding to the other side of the room and hit the wall on the other side and scared us to death. And the porters all came running and remembered that they hadn't tied down everything, so then they got everything secure.
And I either remember this or you told me that I think we had bunk beds.
Yeah.
So we slept together in the bottom bunk bed.
When we'd go up to the dining room, they'd have these huge menus, beautiful, and they would sit you in a special chair and tie your bib on, cut your meat for you, wait on you hand and foot, have beautiful, beautiful meals for us. And we both were so seasick that the food didn't look one bit good to us.
And how different it was for us GIs went over. I of course went over
On a
a few
cargo
months
ship.
ahead, but we had to sleep in those bunk, or those hammock bunks, and about 3 or 4 high along there. And when somebody gets sick, right, from down to the top, yeah. It was terrible.
So you just hope you're on top.
Yeah.
And then was Dad there to greet you when you got off the ship?
Well, we had to wait until the second day in port to get off. We had to wait for our turn to get off and get on a train to head south about 150 miles to Frankfurt, Germany. Actually, we had to change trains in Frankfurt to go on to Simbach, where he would greet us. And not knowing German at all, we had a tag around our neck telling us which train we were to get on, so they would direct us as we'd go from train to train. And it was so scary, not being able to speak English, not knowing for sure if we were on the right train. And when we did pull in the Simbach, it was a very small depot, and they just slowed down, just barely stopped, and all of the GIs that were on the train could tell where we were to get off, and they were very friendly to us and said, "We'll help you get off, we'll help you, where's your luggage?" And they just practically threw our luggage off and helped us off.
The train hardly stops, you just have to almost get off.
And we got off and we couldn't see Dad anywhere until the train pulled out and he was on the other side of the track. And he had the car
They
shipped
could
over.
make a movie out of this.
Yeah.
Well, they
And-
already have it.
They had, and so when we saw him, and then he took us to the car, I was never so happy in all my life to see our car and someone familiar.
It was your car you had
I'd had it shipped over.
in Cheyenne? Or in
Yeah, in Wyoming.
Montana?
Um,
So what was that? Was that the 52 Plymouth?
Yeah,
The blue one?
yeah.
I always loved that car. I can still picture it.
We did a lot of traveling in Germany on that 52, and took it back to the States 3 years later.
We had quite a while in the States afterwards.
So did we live in military housing in Germany, I assume?
Yes. Actually, 2 or 3 different places while we were there. At the time that you and Mom came over, I was in the process of getting reassigned from Sembach Air Base up to Castle. And so we lived in housing down there for probably a week to 10 days, and then went up to Castle and were assigned to a house that was actually off the base. It was a government contract. It was just like a private German house in a small town, about, I think, about 10, 15 miles from where the base was, actually.
Do you remember the name of the town?
Bad Wildingen.
Bad Wildingen?
Bad Wildingen, yeah.
Wildingen.
Mhm.
How could we afford to have a maid? Why did we have a maid?
They only cost $5 a day, which was about $1 a day.
Oh,
Plus, they had this big community right close to the base.
It was the displaced person, ones that were displaced from East
East.
German border, I mean, near East Germany. And they had them there in kind of a camp. And that's what most of them did, is work as maids or working for the government.
hmm.
And she always brought her little girl, who was your age,
Right.
to the
Whose
house.
name was Hilda? Was that the maid?
The maid
The
was
maid's name was
Hilda,
Hilda.
and the little girl's name was,
Gretchen? I can't remember.
I don't know, we have pictures of her.
But she didn't live with us.
No.
They'd go
No.
back to
Yeah.
this, like, camp.
She walked from there.
Oh, hmm. And so then, Jeff was at Wiesbaden?
No,
Where was,
where we adopted him, you mean?
yeah,
What's the name of the town? I can't think of it now.
Well, first of all, I was pregnant over there, and we went to Holland on a vacation in the spring of...
Okay, we're back after a brief commercial. And Mom and Dad, we were just starting to talk about your life in Germany and about the time that you decided to adopt Jeff. And I wondered how that decision came about.
Well,
I don't know, how did it come about?
our main reason for wanting to adopt is probably because of the fact we had lost a baby.
Actually, 2 at that point, right?
Yeah, because we had lost one while we were there in Germany. And
April of
so
55.
we decided that through someone that I worked with, an officer that I became acquainted with, well, both of us became acquainted with them. They had adopted a girl over in Germany, and through talking with them, we found out who to contact and how to start the paperwork as far as adoption. And so we went ahead and got it all worked out. But,
They knew of a little boy in Ravensburg who was soon to be put in an orphanage because the mother could not support him, and he was 13 months old, and he was being put up for adoption. That was about 150 miles from where we lived, but we contacted the youth officer there, called the Jugendamt, and through translators were given an appointment to go down and meet with him. And so we set up the appointment, and on our first trip down there with our paperwork, we were taken to the home.
yeah, we had done a lot as far as the preliminary paperwork, I think, beforehand.
Yes.
Getting references and that type of thing that we had to have. which was even getting references from our hometowns, from the mayor and from the police chief and all different sorts of, the Germans are probably more interested in that than other references really. They wanted to know what your background was as far as when you've been in trouble, you know, in your hometown. Anyway, we pretty well had that together before we went down there. And, so then he took us out to where Jeff and his mother lived. And I don't remember the exact details of how it all come about, but we met her and I don't know.
You were with like a social worker or something,
Yeah,
probably?
yeah, an interpreter.
An interpreter, the UNOPT officer who translated everything for us. And we could see by the home that she was living very meager because her husband was not supporting her because of having Jeff in the home.
The reason for that was because Jeff was not her husband's child, so
Okay.
so he was wanting her to put him up for adoption because of that.
And his name was Klaus
Klaus,
Jeff's name?
and his first name was Klaus Brielmeyer.
Brielmeyer. But I don't know if we decided immediately. Yeah, we did what his name was going to be, Jeffrey J.
I mean, we decided we wanted to take him.
Oh yeah, we took him that day, that very day,
Wow.
with just the clothes he had with him, had on. And we went right to the BX and outfitted him with clothes, which was, like I said, 150 miles from home. And he fell in love with Dad's uniform and all of Dad's stripes and ribbons, and he loved Dad's cap. He wanted all the time to take off his Air Force hat and put it on his head.
And I remember, what I remember is that when you came home, well, I think you had told me you were gonna get me a brother. But you didn't know you were gonna bring him home that day, did you?
No, I don't think that we knew everything would work out as smoothly
Yeah,
as it did.
But when you brought him home, I remember you had long curly hair.
Mhm.
And I thought, wait a minute, I didn't want a sister, I thought I was getting a brother. Do we have pictures of him with his long curls?
Yes, we do. And the next week, he had a haircut, and he didn't walk when we got him. He was 13 months, but we bought shoes for him right away, and he started walking the next week.
Must have just been ready for it.
Of course, the problem with the fact that he didn't understand English, well, it was, on that age, I guess, doesn't understand a lot. Anyway, the parent tells him that.
He responded completely to the maid, who was German, and she did patty cake and everything with him in German, and he really lit up. And the doctor, the pediatrician, told us to be very, very careful with his diet because he wasn't used to the American diet of vegetables and fruit and canned baby food, that we should go very, very easy and change over from their cereal mix that they fed them. And he did definitely have a few problems with diarrhea and so forth until he got adjusted. He just loved American fruit and vegetable and would scream when we'd not give him as much as he wanted. But the little girl, the maid's little girl, and he were such good friends that we finally decided it wasn't good to have the maid and the little girl there because he wasn't adjusting to us being parents and for you being his big sister. So we didn't have her, well, not as often. She still came once a week maybe.
So while we were in Germany, we toured Europe a little bit, didn't we?
Yeah, I can't remember how much that you did with us. I think you went to Holland with us, didn't
I
you?
remember Holland, I remember the tulip fields, I remember tulips that just went on forever and ever. I remember the windmills, I remember getting wooden shoes.
Wooden shoes.
And the little rounds of cheese that were wrapped in the red. I don't know, to me, I remember them as it being Edam.
And
Cheese.
that is the Edam cheese you buy in the stores now.
And we brought it home and made grilled cheese out of it, because grilled cheese was always my favorite food. And I could stretch the
Yeah.
cheese like this when it was grilled.
Yeah, delicious.
Yeah, we stayed in a bed and breakfast in Holland, which I guess is the only time that we have ever stayed in a bed and breakfast.
Oh, really?
And,
Oh, you'd enjoy it.
that was quite an experience too, because of them eating differently and things like that.
And not speaking the language.
Yeah.
They knew American kids normally had eggs for breakfast, so they made sure that you kids had boiled eggs for breakfast served in their little egg cups. And when they brought us the eggs to the room, they made sure that they cracked the top of them and took the shells off so you could take a spoon and eat the boiled egg.
Mhm.
We went to Holland with Keelings, if you
I remember
that
Keelings,
story to
yeah.
us,
Dale and Rookie.
Mhm.
And then, didn't we go to France? Somewhere with castles.
We went to
Switzerland?
Italy and Switzerland. I didn't remember that you were with
Yeah.
us, but I guess you
I
were.
remember the castles,
Okay.
unless I only remember pictures, but it seems like I remember being there.
Neuschwanstein,
Ludwig's castles.
and King Ludwig's castles. Were you with us when we went to the city of canals,
Venice?
Venice? Did you go with
I don't
us to
know.
Venice?
I don't think that she was with us when we went to Italy.
I might not have been, I might have only heard you talk about,
And then you probably didn't go to Rome with us,
I don't think so.
and I don't think probably.
You remember all that?
Mhm.
Would you like to go back to Europe someday?
Oh, yeah. we would.
Yeah, I'd love to go to Europe. Spend a couple months.
Oh, we stayed in such luxurious R&R hotels that were set up for
Garmisch,
along the coast in
from
Italy,
Italy too, yeah.
right on the ocean, and went down to the Isle of Capri, and
We got so sunburned, I hardly could walk. We went out on a boat and I got real sunburned.
the fronts of his legs all blistered. And you were with us
I
then.
think I was there then, because I
Yeah, it
remember
does
it.
seem like
I
it.
remember
Yes.
you were just physically sick.
Yes. And there was a doctor in the hotel that we checked to see what he could put on his burns, because he couldn't stand to have his pants rub across them when he was driving, those blisters. So we extended a day or two to put cold packs on them. Then we came back across Switzerland through the Alps. So that was
But you,
a
as you were
wonderful trip.
touring, that was only less than 10 years after the end of World War II. Did you see buildings that had been
Yes.
bombed out? And
Yes, in
I think
Castle,
even today you can still see some damage.
where we were stationed most of the time there in the city of Castle. There were a lot of bombed out buildings yet there. Churches, and I don't know if you've seen our movies at different times. We have movies of some of the buildings that we took pictures of.
That were bombed out, and still they were making the most of
They
their,
were using them as much as they could, yeah.
with flower boxes on every building, even though it was 2/3 destroyed. To this, now we have heard that those churches have been and buildings in those cities have been rebuilt.
Sure.
Wow, yes, that's
45 years ago.
Do you remember whether there was a pretty strong, did you feel any anti-Semitic, or were you just not really aware of whether there was any?
The Germans, I think, pretty well liked Americans.
Very much so.
Nazism had well died by that time,
Yeah.
I think. I would say the Americans were very well, you didn't feel unsafe walking in their cities and things like that at all. We were well treated by them,
Very, very kind, and the base always gave orientation to the personnel when they were off base of how to dress and how to treat Germans also. I remember that being something that was stressed to dependents as well as military when you were off base, of how to treat the German people.
I suppose to dress modestly, not wear shorts
yes.
and tank
Yeah.
tops and stuff like that.
Yes, definitely. It was a good 3 years.
Mhm.
The last 3 months that we lived there, we lived in a ski lodge that overlooked the valley looking into the east zone. And we could see the radar sites on the other side, on the Russian side. And it was a site that was set up by a security service. And
it was an area where the Americans monitored the Russians from being close to the border, monitored their movements of troops and equipment and so forth. That was what our
The
mission was.
purpose of being there,
Mhm.
yeah. And what was your job at that time, do you remember?
I was in administration, running the order, where the records are kept. That type of thing.
Did you work over there?
no,
You have 2 little kids at home. Yeah. So then, did you have any choice about where to come back to?
You get to
When you came back?
volunteer, but you don't necessarily. Actually, our assignment when we first came back was to San Antonio.
That would have been different.
It was changed just right before we left from over there to come here instead, or to Omaha instead.
no.
Excuse me, no,
To Virginia. Lyman Air Force Base.
Langley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, when we moved to Virginia, I remember we lived in a bunch of different places before we got a pretty permanent place, didn't we? Didn't we live
Yeah,
at
we
Buckrow
lived-
Beach for a while and some temporary housing there?
Yeah, we did, that was the only place, so we lived there.
Was that the
And we
only-
moved into government quarters.
Okay.
No, we lived on Preston Street.
Well, yeah, we only lived in Buckrow Beach for about, that's right, we lived in 20 West Preston for a year or so before we got in government quarters.
At Buckrow Beach, I seem to remember there was a hurricane and lots of flooding.
Yeah, it wasn't while we lived there though.
Oh, it wasn't?
after
We
we'd
went
moved from
back
there.
and saw it? Okay.
Because that was real close to where we lived in town.
I wondered why we didn't suffer any damage, but I remembered us driving around and seeing
Yeah,
cars
flooded.
buried in sand and
Mhm.
streets that were totally buried in sand.
Yeah. We were far enough from the beach where we lived then, but it didn't affect us.
And then Jerry was born in Virginia.
We came to Virginia in '57, and Jerry was born in '61, so we were there until '64, so we were.
Jerry and Joni were both born in Newport News Hospital.
That base
Virginia.
hospital?
No, because I needed specialized treatment.
Yeah.
The gynecologist and So they sent me to gynecologist in Newport News.
Yeah. And you had the Sherrod card procedure
Procedure.
before Jerry?
Yes. They had attempted it at a pregnancy before that, and it was too late when they attempted it, and the water broke and miscarried. So then with Jerry, they did it before I had gone into any type of labor, and kept me flat for almost a month. And that had to be replaced once also. And then he was premature by 6 weeks.
Weighed
And
about 5 pounds or 410 or something like that?
410, I think. is what
four-
it is.
410.
He was scrawny, I remember. He looked like my 5th grade teacher, Mr. Keene. I remember he was born when I was at a roller skating party,
Oh,
and you came and picked me up from the skating party and told me about him, and we went to the hospital to see him. And I remember thinking, oh, he's so ugly, he's got that big nose, he looks like Mr. Keene.
I hate-
Jill told me that Sherrod Carr was actually who put your stitch in.
Uh-huh.
no,
Oh, no,
no, that was, the procedure was,
The-
I mean, that wasn't Dr. Sherrod.
Okay.
no, but it was named after a doctor. The Sherrod card procedure
Yeah,
Yeah.
was named after a
For
doctor.
some reason, I
But
thought
I
that's who
was-
actually put it in.
that was going through my mind right now
It
too,
was
trying
like
to
one of the
remember.
first ones or something.
I think just that you were a
But-
pioneer.
But I was one of the experimental with the doctor that was doing it. It was a very new procedure. And then after I went into premature labor for the 3rd time, the first time it tore loose, and then they did it the 2nd time and went into premature labor again. He was delivered then 6 weeks premature by cesarean because they couldn't stop the labor. And I too, the first time I saw him, they wheeled me down to the nursery and he had all these tubes and I couldn't believe how skinny he was, and with those tubes, it just made me sick to see him. And he stayed in the hospital for 16 days then. I went home after 10. Can you imagine them keeping
With a C-section?
with a C-section
10
for
days
10
was
days?
pretty normal probably.
But I stayed in the hospital for 10 days when Joni was born also. Of course, it was the same hospital, but with her being a C-section. And that was the norm.
And you had a baby at home then?
Yeah.
Well, a 2-year-old.
2-year-old.
Yeah. 3 kids at home.
But she was almost term. She was 2 weeks early, but and she was 5 pounds. Big baby.
I was gonna say, we have small babies in this family. Well,
Yeah,
let's
but
see,
she
what else?
didn't-
What
she
about
didn't-
Virginia?
It took us a year to acclimate to Virginia being on the coast with the dampness,
Humidity was
the humidity. But after we got used to it, we loved living there with the mild winter.
The kids went to parochial school.
Yeah, I remember Emmanuel Lutheran,
Kindergarten through 6th,
5th grade for me.
5th grade.
Yeah.
And Jeff went through 3rd.
Second,
Probably second,
just 3 years
maybe.
younger, yeah. And then from there was when Dad got orders to Korea.
Yeah.
That must have been hard. Did you know that was coming?
Well, yeah, I had actually had orders to, before that, when we were pregnant with Joni, and I got
Got
out of the assignment
extended.
to begin with, and so I knew You know, once she was at least 6 weeks old, I was gonna get reassigned.
But it wasn't till she was 13 months that you
Yeah,
had to
it
go.
was longer, but, I mean, I knew I was gonna get reassigned
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. Of course, we'd been at Virginia for 7 years. And that was a sad time, for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Going off and,
So then we moved back to Minnesota while Dad was in Korea and lived in a house in Slayton. Joni was 3 months old, not 13 months.
Oh,
He was
okay.
13, she was 13 months old
When
when
he
he
came
came back
mm,
from Korea. So Joni 3 months old, Jerry 2 and 3 months.
I was sixth
You
grade.
were in 6th grade and Jeff was in 3rd grade. So that was, and being in a civilian environment after being at a military base in base housing was a real big adjustment, even though there were a lot of relatives that lived around. I just felt out of place.
Yeah. They weren't as open and
Yeah.
welcoming.
Well, it wasn't the same feeling as what you have when you live in a military community where you have like circumstances within the family because you look out for each other all the time. And that was very hard to adjust to. And everyone, I didn't want people's sympathy.
Yeah,
You know, I liked their support, but not their sympathy.
yeah.
Like saying that Dad was probably starving in Korea and all of the things that, and feeling sorry for me and all. I didn't want that, you know. I wanted their support, but not sympathy. It was our choosing that he was in the Air Force, not by.
I don't remember you ever acting particularly depressed. You probably hid it well from us. I'm sure it was hard for you.
I had
But-
quite a few tearful nights, I know.
Yeah, I'm sure. One thing I seem to remember is, didn't you write every day?
Every day.
both of us-
Every
both of
day
us
for a
did.
year. Can you imagine?
No email.
No email.
That's for sure, and no telephone.
Lots of postage.
Yeah. The whole time we didn't call each other or anything, so.
Now,
Letters was the only contact we
see,
had with each other
today,
the whole time.
when couples are separated in the military, they have so much contact with each other.
With
Yeah.
Email,
with
with telephone
so easy now to
service.
call
Mhm.
People
overseas.
at church that have been separated now, they talk to each other every day.
Mhm.
The ones in Saudi and
Yeah,
so forth.
Yeah, it was very
You know, it
different.
was a different time and communication
Yep.
was so different.
And what do you think communication will be in the next 50 years?
right.
And in Korea, our mail would bunch up, so a lot of times I'd get 5 or 6 letters one time from, because they would
Yeah.
get delayed.
I do almost remember, this is very faint, you being disappointed if there wasn't a letter, but
Oh,
then the
yeah.
next day there'd be 2.
Mhm. Grandpa spent a lot of time at our house because he just took over Joni. Joni was his little girl. And he would sit and feed her and rock her because she was so young and he always called Joni his little girl.
Mhm.
It was a chance for you kids to get to
Yeah.
know grandparents better, and
Yeah.
your cousins and so forth. because we weren't around them that much otherwise, so.
Yeah.
It's fun to review those movies that we took then. We had them on just the other day, looking at them, and it was fun to
Wasn't that the
see the
year that
cousins.
Kennedy was assassinated?
Mhm.
Yes.
While you were overseas?
Yep. It was.
I remember that so plainly coming across TV.
I was in class with Mrs. Solberg, I think, or was it DeShaza? It was a teacher that you remembered from
Oh.
Slayton. Mrs. DeShaza or Mrs.? I think it was-
Hazel was in Virginia.
Oh, was it?
Yes.
Maybe it was Mrs. Solberg then,
Solberg, yeah, that would be who it was, yeah.
in Slayton,
Mhm,
because I know she knew you.
yeah.
She was old.
Kim went with her daughter at one time.
Oh.
So she probably was old.
Must have been old.
What were your duties in Korea?
I was first sergeant there. That was a tough assignment because we guys were always getting in trouble downtown for one reason or another. And
Drinking and prostitutes.
very stressing assignment. I mean, not only being separated from the family, but it was one of the worst assignments I've ever had anywhere.
Having to be a disciplinarian.
Yeah.
Having to get them out of trouble and to keep them straight with their families back in the States. They're not sending their money to their family, but spending it off base.
Mhm.
It was definitely an area where people could get in trouble very easily.
Yeah.
Get things they shouldn't be doing downtown.
I remember our house very well in Slayton. It was a nice house,
Mhm.
nice yard, nice neighbors. I was best friends with the girl next door. Her mom's name was Trudy.
Right. Beautician.
Yeah. What was the daughter's name? Belle?
And she had, and they had she had twin sisters. Well,
Trudy
yeah,
had twin
Trudy
daughters,
had
yeah.
twin daughters, and then the other girl, but I can't remember.
And then Marge Meacham on the other side.
Yeah, a distant cousin, huh?
First cousin. Yeah.
Is she? First cousin? Well,
She was Ben Onken's daughter.
oh, okay. That would be first cousin, yeah. Mary Meacham.
Then Dad let us know that he was getting an assignment to
Actually, it
San
is.
Antonio.
That's one.
Again?
Right. I'm
was
mistaken
the
about
time.
the other. That was when it was. I had the assignment to San Antonio, which was changed to Langley right about a month before I left. So we thought we were going to Texas when I came back from
You mean
Korea.
it was changed to
Offutt.
Omaha?
Yeah.
to Offutt.
Changed to Offutt.
Yeah, excuse me.
Uh-huh.
And it was the day or two before the household goods was picked up to be shipped, that the
Oh,
order
no.
was changed
Oh,
to
no.
Omaha. And we just couldn't believe that we were lucky enough to get it,
You didn't want to go to San Antonio,
well,
mostly because it was so far from family, I suppose.
We were much happier to have got here, in Nebraska. Because, like I say, it was closer to home. So I'd had my taste of San Antonio with
Oh,
basic training, and it was
yeah.
never too impressed with Texas.
So then you came here, I had 7th through 11th grade here. That was 5 years.
Mm-hmm. 79, we went to Guam.
So here I had middle school and part of high school. That was when they only had one high school.
Yeah.
we lived in a rented house over on Kaylin for a few months, and then moved in base quarters until we went to Guam. On Vandenberg,
What was that number? 20-something.
2901.
25, was it 2901? Vandenberg Avenue.
And now we're at 2902.
Mhm.
We're so close.
Right,
We're within a
right
mile
on
of
Cape Art
there.
Road.
Yeah. We're right off of Cape Art Road, isn't it?
It is a funny feeling driving along Cape
Yes.
Art Road,
Mhm.
heading toward our old house.
Yes.
And I got a vision of that as we were coming the other night.
We've gone by there too so many times, and I keep thinking of how many years back did we live in that house.
Yeah, I'll have to drive in there sometime and
Yeah.
see if I can find it.
You could. Looks the same way, been painted a time or two. The trees got bigger and
So, when you first moved here, how did you find a church? Was it just by accident? Did you just look around for a Missouri Synod church and?
I really don't remember for sure how we did, I mean, there only was the one
There
Missouri
was
Synod
only
church
the
in
one
Bellevue,
Missouri
so-
Synod church.
Well, that's
Bellevue,
probably how you
so,
found it.
yeah, I'm sure it was.
And as soon as we got there, we found out that Ed had let them know that we were being transferred to this area.
It was, I was trying to think. Someone we met too, I think, after we were there, that was, or no, maybe I'm thinking the other way, but someone that, I don't know, disregard.
Someone had been stationed with Abernathy's in Alaska
Yes, that was, yeah.
that started coming to Pilgrim Lutheran at that time.
And who was the
Johnson.
pastor then?
Pastor Schuett.
Okay.
And he's the one that confirmed you?
Mm-hmm. And Jeff probably.
Yeah, definitely Jeff. I shouldn't think, probably not Jerry, not just because,
No, I think Jerry and Joni were both confirmed by,
Weir. Lester Weir, I think, was been for both of them.
no, but before that it was Brucius. Brucius confirmed
Yeah, Brucius did.
Jeff
Right. Well,
and
I don't
Weir.
think Jeff,
I think Jerry and Joanne.
I think Jeff would have been with Schuett, yeah.
Oh, probably. Mhm.
And then Johnson was there for a short time.
Yeah,
Or
he was there, but he was the
Kind of a
DCE,
youth
though.
director.
He
Yeah.
wasn't the lead
Yeah, he
pastor.
wasn't.
Okay. And then we're,
Weir and then Brucius. I mean,
No.
Brucius and then Weir.
mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So then, when you got orders for
And
Guam,
Seibel came, and Seibel was here
He was
with
an associate
Pastor
pastor.
Weir as an associate pastor.
when you got orders for Guam, was that a surprise, or you knew it was gonna be somewhere overseas? Does it sort of come like, you know, it's time for an overseas assignment?
Yeah, you do, because you come up, they put out lists where you stood on the overseas, trying to think what they did call it. I can't think of the term now, but, actually, Frank Barrett had helped as far as my getting an assignment there. He wasn't actually the one that, was in the assignment section, but he had influence with the people that did, and I was a pretty good friend too of the, I was trying to think of his name, and he was a member of our church too at one time. Anyway, it was kind of, with a little help that we got an assignment there
Yeah.
rather than somewhere else.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would have been a remote trip again.
Could have been, well,
Oh.
I'd had remote the last one though, before that, so it
Right.
shouldn't have been. But
And so having a concurrent trip to Guam was much more ideal than going
yeah.
to places where dependents followed later.
Yeah,
And Guam was a 2-year tour, whereas some of the places were 3, and then they became extended to a 4-year. England and some of them, was that later that they were 4-year tours
quite a
then?
bit later, I think.
But the 2-year to Guam was not a bad assignment.
Not a
at all.
hardship at all,
Not a
no.
hardship.
I don't know if you remember our making the trip to California where we stopped in Denver
Yeah.
to begin with. and
Yeah.
That was when the moon landing was.
right.
and,
Oh, I remember
big
traveling
flights.
across country. I think we were at, we were in a hotel for the moon landing, and I had poison ivy because we had We stopped in Minnesota
Mm.
before that, and it seems like it was at Lake Chautauqua, where I laid out on a field that
Oh.
was newly mowed,
Oh,
and
yeah.
got poison
Poison
ivy
ivy.
really bad, and so I couldn't wait to get to the hotel to soak in a cool tub of
Mhm.
water.
Mm.
But the moon landing was on, and I wanted to see that, but I
Mhm.
wanted to be in the tub. And it seems like it was a kind of a scuzzy hotel, kind of a dirty floor, a hotel in Salt Lake City.
Well, I didn't remember that was the same one, yeah, that definitely was the situation we had, but you guys went swimming though in that,
In the Salt
Great
Lake,
State
which
Lake,
was
yeah.
filthy.
yeah.
Yeah,
And the hotel was so bad,
yeah,
I couldn't hardly get cleaned up afterwards.
yeah. But the Morin Tabernacle was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I do remember going across Colorado, visiting the Wrights. We went up to Pikes Peak, have our picture taken on Pikes Peak. I'm wearing these red and white bell bottoms.
Mhm. We also went to Reno on that trip. And,
I was too young to gamble.
Then we went to John Dolores's in Sacramento,
Okay.
and on to San Francisco.
We shipped the car as we boarded for the long flight to Guam. I can remember disembarking
Me too.
in Guam.
And
And
the
the
humidity.
And the humidity
Just
just
about
about
knocked you over.
Right.
The Fogos met us there.
The Fogos met us.
You had known them before?
They
Yeah.
had been
They
neighbors
were-
across the street in Cape Art.
They had put food in our house that we were
Refrigerator.
moving into.
Oh.
So, which was a common practice that you had a sponsor
Hmm.
who was supposed to kind of get you set up in your
Hmm.
place at that time.
Did we go directly to base housing there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can picture that house too.
We lived in two different places there, and I can't, we got a smaller place first, I think. And then later we moved into a 4-bedroom. We got a 3-bedroom, I think, first, and we were eligible for a 4-bedroom because of the number of children we had. And so then they moved us later to a 4-bedroom.
One of the things I remember on that base that is such a great idea, I don't know why they don't do it everywhere, or everywhere where there's decent weather, is the outdoor theaters. They were like drive-ins,
Yeah.
but they were outdoors,
And you sat
and
on
you
benches.
sat on benches
Mhm.
and watched the big screen
Mhm.
movies. I thought that was such a great idea,
Well,
because
that
the
was like-
weather was so nice in the evenings.
That was like the old days in Slayton. We used to
Oh,
have
really?
outdoor theaters.
Yeah, but they were drive-ins, weren't they? Didn't
No,
you sit in your
they
car?
had, way back, they had outdoor theaters before they had indoor ones.
Oh, really? Hmm. I thought, why don't they do that at places more? It's a cheap way. Of course, the
Mhm.
movies were cheap too
Yeah.
on base. It's probably only 50 cents or $1.
I think it was 25 was what it was.
Oh,
Yeah, they were real cheap.
and school was interesting, where it was half Guamanians and half
Mhm.
military dependents.
And Jeff
But I
felt,
had a good senior year.
and Jeff loved his schooling over there and had so many friends that were Filipino or Guamanian.
Yeah, I did too.
And had a super baseball and football.
Football primarily.
season.
Quarterback for the team, and it was a sophomore, I suppose he was.
Did a lot of swimming and snorkeling with Freddie, who was our lifeguard at the pool.
I remember Freddie, yeah.
And Freddie would take him snorkeling, and he'd go a lot of times with Freddie to the beach.
And Jerry was on the swimming team too.
Yeah.
He was a good swimmer.
Yeah, he did real well.
And you and Joni took swimming lessons together.
Right, and that's where I learned to swim.
Uh-huh.
Here I am, how old?
Oldest one.
40.
You were probably 40 because I was 18.
Let's see, what year were we over there?
79 to 81,
See, so I was
No,
40.
69
or 69.
to 70 to 71. Yeah. You were 40.
so I was
Mhm.
40.
When you learned to swim?
Learned to swim, even got my advanced swimming certificate, and took diving, but I can't remember getting my certificate for it.
I think you had trouble with diving, if I remember. You did it, but
Yeah.
never liked it.
And I still
That's how
don't,
I am too.
I still don't like to swim, really.
Yeah. And you
I
were,
struggle,
you were a Red Cross volunteer there too?
yes, in the dental clinic. Worked as a dental assistant. And
And you worked,
I worked the Red Cross with the Airback planes when they brought the wounded back through Guam and refueled the planes on their way from Vietnam back to the States or to Hawaii or to Japan. And we would go on board while the crew took a break, and we would serve them, and it was really, really pathetic to see these wounded soldiers who hadn't been redressed yet from.
I remember every morning the B-52s taking off,
yeah,
hearing them charging up their engines or whatever and watching them take off. I don't know about watching them. Once they were up in the air, you could see them. If you drove by the base, you'd see them all lined up.
Some of the people that were really connected with the B-52s said that they'd always listen to them take off and count them as they took off, and they knew what time they were to return, and they would count them as they came in. I'll always remember that because some of the pilots from there that would mention that. It was a pretty tough time.
And then I had a choice of going to University of Guam.
Mhm.
or it's marine biology was about all they had to offer.
Scuba diving.
I don't think they had a nursing program.
That would have been interesting. You might have been the director of hospitals in
Yeah,
Agana by
right,
now.
right. It'd be neat to go back to Guam now. I hear that it's quite a tourist attraction
Yes,
now.
I've heard that it is too. Hildy and Cliff went last
Oh,
year
did they?
on a space available. They spent 1 or 2 nights there. They said too that it's really built up.
Now, when you came back from Guam and you flew into Offutt, wasn't it Fogelsson that were involved in, so who met you?
No, I
No,
flew to
Marlis.
Minnesota,
Marlis met you and took
but
you to Minnesota.
she didn't meet me at Offutt, did she?
No, not Offutt,
In Minnesota.
no.
Or you flew
And-
into Offutt?
Yep.
Did I?
Yeah. But that's why I was thinking that Fogels were back here and that they were instrumental in getting you.
I thought it was I also thought it was Marlis. And then it was summer. So then we went to Minnesota, because I spent the summer with Grandpa and Grandma in Minnesota, and then they took me to college.
Yeah, I knew that Marlis had been there, but I was thinking someone military-wise that we made arrangements with to meet you.
Well, maybe Marlis drove down here then or something.
No, she was here. She was living here.
She was
Oh.
living here
Okay.
because she
And then
had,
maybe I rode with her to Minnesota.
Yeah.
That could be that I flew in here. I don't remember flying into
Yeah, I can
Offutt
see
as
it.
well as I remember flying from Guam to LA and then making a transfer from there to San Francisco and then having to fly from San Francisco to Omaha and my plane being delayed 17 hours. And was I flying space available?
Coming back from Guam, you were, yeah.
Okay.
That's why you
That's
ended
why I
up,
had to wait.
that's why you had to fly into here too.
Okay.
I mean,
And-
that,
That was a long time to spend in the airport waiting to get a flight.
I've still got a copy of your orders.
Oh.
I ran across them not too long ago.
I don't remember being as scared as I was bored and impatient, just wanting to get on with it. But I do remember flying into LA and all the lights were just unbelievable. I hadn't seen so many city lights ever, flying in at night.
I ran across a lot of your tapes the other day that you had sent us to Guam, that you had made at the University of Minnesota.
Yeah, we used to make cassette tapes and send them.
And we sent cassette tapes to you.
Yeah.
I played them the other day and almost cried as I read them, or listened to them, because I remembered the feeling I had when we got them when we were in Guam and you were so far away. That's why I tell parents when they send their kids off to college around here, well, think what I had to put up with. And we
3,000 miles away.
when we sent Jill off to college
More than 3,000 miles.
from Guam.
It wasn't long after that that you guys came back
Almost a year.
A
to the
year.
States.
Yeah.
It was a full year. And then it wasn't under the best of circumstances. You came back a little bit
For eye-
early
for
for
eye
your eye
surgery.
For
surgery.
eye surgery.
I remember when you called, and you had never called me at college. And when you called, and I heard Dad's voice, I knew something was wrong. But it was, so you came back just a couple months early, is that what it
Yeah,
was?
I think we were supposed to come back in about July, we came in May instead.
And then you lived in temporary housing for a while,
We lived
Yeah.
in a trailer for,
in a trailer for a while, and in the pastor's house.
yeah.
That was a nice place.
Mhm.
While he
Yeah,
was on vacation, we house sat or something like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, big Irish setter dog.
That's kinda ironic too, because it's almost in the same area now too.
Oh,
That's right down the road here.
It's a mile from here, but,
there's
you know, that was just country.
a house all by
area.
itself, right, out in the country.
Yeah.
That house is still there, but they built the new
They,
houses up
they
around.
built all around it.
Hmm.
And it was, you had cherry trees and the cherries were ripe when we were there,
Yeah,
so we put them
I
all in the
remember that.
freezer. And
Yeah.
Frank and Eleanor Barrett still have contact with that chaplain.
Hmm.
He is the chaplain where the pastor where their son Steve goes to church in Colorado Springs.
Oh. Hmm. So then you got Cape Art housing again after that?
Yeah, see, when we came back, no, when we came back from Guam, you mean?
Yeah,
No, we bought, that's when
Back.
we moved,
on Pelton.
no,
Okay.
after we bought the house while we were in that, staying in that chaplain's house.
Okay.
And moved in, and after we moved out of his place. And
Jeff must have been about a junior then?
Jeff was a junior, yeah, because he came back, he'd been the quarterback of the football team over in Guam, and then came back here thinking, you know, he's really gonna fit in the football program, and he only stayed with it about a month, I think, and he was very unhappy, and
Yeah.
he just didn't fit into their program here because
It was
Their
probably
plays
already
were
pretty
good.
established.
yeah, that's the thing, if you don't grow up in the Bellevue system,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to break in anyway.
Mm-hmm.
He got discouraged with it, and, but
Did he play baseball through high school?
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And Jerry did too. Football and baseball.
And Joni played softball.
Mm.
Boring.
We used to try to decide who's going to whose game.
That sounds familiar.
A father should go to his son's game.
I could hardly sit through the girls' games. They would have ball after ball after ball after ball. It didn't seem anything like there was any rhyme or reason to their game.
Jill's always said that she never knew what you did at Offutt. It was like secret.
Well, I
Well,
was
you were in
in security
JSTPS,
service.
right?
Yeah, well, I was in security service too, the first assignment here, and then it was JSTPS, the last assignment here in security services. You're limited to what you can tell about what you do, so.
And he was underground, third floor underground in headquarters, and,
So can you tell us now?
you know, he's been debriefed.
He doesn't remember a thing about it.
If you remember anything, they have to shoot you when you leave, so.
Yeah.
Well, all of the reconnaissance and stuff, and we went on some of the tours to the underground, and when they saw, it had the red telephone connected right with, and the reconnaissance planes that flew out of here, and the looking glass planes that made it was very interesting to know that we were under such good, or had such good surveillance of,
The command
Around
post
the
there
world.
would direct a nuclear attack if it were, to be done. And the airborne one that they used to fly, they don't fly it anymore.
They don't have looking glass
You
anymore.
know, but, I mean, that had the same capability, the one in the air as they had underground, so. In case one or the other was knocked out.
How did you make the decision then to retire?
Well,
You'd probably been talking about it for a while.
I would say that I was getting somewhat fed up with military life by that time. I was due again for overseas assignment.
And you had the option at any time?
After 20 years, yeah, you had the
Oh.
option. I just did 26.
and he had 26, and that was probably his last longevity boost in pay, and it would mean another overseas assignment, and it
That was
was
the
at
biggest thing,
the
overseas
end
assignments.
of the Vietnam War, which would probably mean a tour over
Yeah.
there. It was very possible.
The Vietnam War was close to over by then, it was 74, so. It definitely would have been an overseas assignment quite soon if I had
Yeah.
stayed in longer.
So was that quite an adjustment then when you retired?
Well, I knew what I was gonna do when I retired because I had already made arrangements to go into with AAL selling insurance, so. Yeah, adjustment, I would say yes, very definitely. It didn't take me too long to feel that I didn't fit as a salesperson for AAL insurance. But I stayed with it for almost a year. Actually, probably 4 or 5 months before my retirement and before this came up with AAL, I took the test for a post office job and had passed that.
Oh,
And
yeah, I
got
kind of
accepted
remember
for the
that.
post office.
Yeah, for civil service.
Yeah, and reason in this AAL thing kind of had come up at the same time. But the job that I got in the post office was typing in zip codes on machines, and I didn't care for that at all.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a carrier is what I wanted.
Yeah.
I couldn't get that, and so I only stayed with it for about a month. And that's when I went with AAL instead.
And then after that?
After that, then was when I took the job out at school.
The Papillion
Yeah.
School District.
Mhm.
And when did you
And-
start with those schools? Right away? What year did you start with them?
Well, I was with Sarah Coventry Jewelry
Oh, that's
for
right.
about 6 years, and I think when Joni was a senior in high school, I decided to try the school District 4 job and applied and got a job as receptionist at Bellevue East. Well,
Mhm.
actually,
You were
actually,
working for
no.
the school before that.
I started as down at the DMC, District Material Center. And I worked there for a year or maybe even 2 years before I went to Bellevue East High as receptionist and retired from there in,
Was it 93?
93, I think.
And then you retired, Dad, in 94?
Mhm.
And since then, how do you keep yourselves busy?
Watch TV and soaps and
Oh.
Sit and drink beer, watch TV, right?
fishing.
Don't ever let it be said that retired people have nothing to do, because you can have as much to do as you want to do. There are so many areas to work in, and people, when they find out that you're retired and have nothing to do.
I'm sure. Oh, call Judy and Jiggs. Is this a cartoon about retirement? My grandpa says he takes 104 strokes with his razor when he shaves. He counted them? Grandpa's retired. He doesn't have much else to do. And Gasoline Alley, the guy says, it feels funny being retired. The other guy says, you'll get used to it. After a while, you'll wonder how you devoted so much time to work.
So that's what retirement is like.
Oh, yeah, right. Well, you've had some nice trips since you retired.
Yeah, we have. And hopefully we're gonna have some more.
Yeah.
We're kind of signed up for Hawaii now,
Really?
but I think it will be November. Maybe not this coming November, but the next year, because we haven't, Don Wild is putting it together, and he has several couples on the list. Would you like to join us? He's taking
Nice.
this many people, and it'll be probably 10 days.
Mm-hmm.
So
Couple of
Our-
different islands, probably.
our Alaskan tour,
5.
um,
5
Wow.
5 islands, and
Wow.
you get on a
Wow.
cruise ship, and then you cruise and get off and back on and go to the next island, and so therefore you're on the same cruise ship for
Mm-hmm.
5 nights. I think that would be fun, nice. Our Alaskan cruise was wonderful 2 years ago.
Lots of trips to Colorado.
And to Wisconsin, to
Did you go to
northern
San
Wisconsin,
Francisco?
and to Door County.
No.
We went to Arizona a couple times.
Oh, yeah, right.
I'd have to do that again sometime.
It'd be nice.
If I'm happy.
Before the tape runs out, do you have any other questions for your folks about anything they can remember about past ancestors and stories they've heard from the old country, or what people in the old country did that were the ancestors to?
You know, I really don't, and our heritage from the old country is real vague as far as to when they came over originally and so forth is not very well documented.
So you don't know when the first Onken came over?
Mm-mm.
And I don't know on my ancestors either. I just remember my parents talking so much about the Depression and the hard times that they grew up in, both of them, and how precious every penny was, and what little money they made, and how, as far as clothes, their housing and the meager things were, to us, were precious things to them as they were growing up. And to my dad's dying day, he would comment about the luxury that people live in today.
Yeah. Although, I was amazed as a kid how expensive farm equipment is.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, and now, and he would
Turn
turn over in his
grave.
grave if he knew how much.
If he saw some of the tractors that they're using
Yeah,
now.
and the equipment that they use now.
Yeah.
He was one of the last ones to get a tractor. He had his horses.
Really?
Oh, yes. All of his neighbors around him farmed with tractors, but he had horses.
I think he had those kind of machinery much before our family did. I mean, I know you talk about your times, but I grew up in a family where we didn't have a father for
Yeah.
about 5 years, and I still don't. I even know how my mother was able to, raise us 4 kids, to keep up the farm. I mean, she did it with hired help.
But how could she pay for hired help?
Yeah,
There must have been contributions from other family members.
yeah, and this Ed, of course, was the person who helped out part of the time. And that's
Yeah.
how, of course, he
Yeah,
ended up marrying my mother.
yeah. Well, any more final words? For 50 years together and
Well, we're looking forward to 50 more. I
just
guess.
celebrated your anniversary. 50 more, all right.
50 good years.
And coast from here on out.
I wonder what our kids will say in 50 years about their ancestors.
Yeah, remembering.
Well, we'll talk about the meager times when
Yeah.
some of our televisions didn't even have VCRs attached.
Yeah. Remember when we had to teach Mom and Dad how to use computers? Can you believe that they didn't get a computer until they were...
And I remember when there wasn't.
In
I remember when there wasn't
2000,
even an
Year
internet.
2000.
Yeah.
And the Y2K scare.
Oh, yeah, that'll be interesting to talk about. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Very enjoyable.
That'd be fun for everybody to hear it.